We're hearing more from some of the younger creators that they want to know more about like the hustle, like what it's like to have it, you know, get a job, keep a job, like just to have a job in this industry. What do those things mean? Like, I mean, like whether and so some people who go for more like place to place, that's something I want them to talk about.
Yeah.
You know, then we talk about like as what we thought of with you is some of the live-work balance, some of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And because some people, like, you know, some people don't. Some people shut down at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Other people don't. You know, and I certainly suffer from never. I'm learning how to leave my computer at work.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you.
It's very easy for the people who own the studio to like, okay, I'll put in that kind of time. It's my studio. I mean, we've got decades and decades long history in this industry in Canada, and there's been so much taking advantage of artists over those years. And I've been places where it's like, well, we're all one big family, and we all got to pull together to make something happen. And so most of like people like Brett and Morgan, most of us have been through that kind of thing where you're just assuming your people are going to put in those kinds of hours, and you take advantage of it. So when you get people like that, like when you get people like Brett and Morgan, when you get people who are, we don't want to ask you to do that. It's a really hard ask when you're trying to grow your company.
They do ask though, which is something I've always appreciated with, sorry, I know I'm cutting you off.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
But I think something that's really nice about Tinman in particular is that, one, it usually is an ask. Like there are times where they ask where it's like, we need this, and you're very much, you're not left in the dark in the way you are in a lot of places where you don't realize how dire things are. Like, you know, like when Tinman's like, we have a push, it's like, you know, the second that they know, or like soon after they know. So it's almost like they don't have to ask because you're aware, you know what's going on. So you're kind of like, I'm going to put in these extra hours, one, because you need it, but also because if I don't, I'm like, it's not like you're going to get fired. It's like, this place will go under if I don't put in the extra hours, and then I'll be out of a job because of that. So you're kind of, you're a little bit more a part of it. You're a little more in the know. It's
not so much an ask as it's that like you're part of that decision making from the beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of like you do what you got to do to get it done.
Yeah. But again, like it's tough on a good studio owner to put your people through that.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? And but it is unavoidable in terms of when you're, you know, a young company and you're trying to get this stuff at the door, and you're trying to, because you can't do it all yourself, you know, and it's with, again, the right people in charge of a studio will have guilt over that kind of thing, and it's tough to that building that kind of team from the ground up is really tricky. Right. So more like how you came to this. You went to Sheridan.
I did.
So going back to like the early days, like little you, how did animation become an option for you? For most of us, it was all like this sort of, you know, thing we did as kids.
Yep.
It's an interesting way to come up to a vocation, as like the thing you did as a kid for fun becomes what you do. You got to start taking it seriously. So, but we come across people who weren't drawers originally, who weren't artists.
There are plenty of people here who come from like music or even just like the technical side of it, but will also do drawing from time to time, or do design from time to time.
Yeah. So you, as a kid.
I was definitely a drawer. I'm kind of like you'll probably hear this story a lot, where it's like 3 years old, I was drawing everywhere. My floor was just littered in drawings. And I used to, my dad will like tell this story all the time, because I would actually draw like not panels, but I would draw like a full book, and I would staple it together, and I would have like this storybook. So basically all the storybooks I had like in my shelf and stuff, I would try to like make my own. So the storyboarding phase happened pretty early. But as far as like considering it as a career, that didn't quite click right away. It was one of those, like, I was always drawing, but never really thought of it as a job. It's weird, because I have a lot of artists in my family, so it's not like I didn't consider, it wasn't like I need to be a doctor and art is silly, but I just never like thought about how, like, I didn't want to be an illustrator. I didn't want to be a painter. I didn't want to enter into a gallery. I can appreciate fine art, and I love it. Like, I know a lot of friends who are sculptors and things like that, and it's beautiful, but it was never really my thing. The fine arts were never my strong suit. I loved cartoons. I loved like designing these cute little characters. Like, for some reason, animation didn't quite click until later. Once I got into high school, it was actually weird. I took so many math courses, and I had this idea in my head that I was going to be a pilot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was very much like geared in that direction. And then kind of at the last minute, I just like bumped into a friend who was like talking about like applying to Sheridan and stuff, and that's when I kind of like caught one of animation, and all of a sudden that just made so much sense, and I was like, forget all of this, like drop it.
So come on, so where did piloting come from? How was that a thing?
I was just
It just sounded cool?
It just sounded cool. I mean, I wish it was a more like inspiring story of like, my dad was a pilot and he was in a war and he blew up in the sky, but he saved 10 busloads of children. But no, it was just like, I thought it was cool. I wanted a job that wasn't going to keep me doing anything too mundane, I guess, something that would keep me interested and that, you know, free flights and all that. It seemed like it had some good perks.
Did you know anyone who was a pilot? Was there any kind of...
I didn't at the time, although my dad does have his pilot's license, but that was like, he was never a pilot. He got like a crop duster plane type pilot things. But it's weird because I have a younger cousin who's actually a pilot now, or is in school to become a pilot. And it wasn't like, we never talked about it or anything. It's just like a weird coincidence.
It's in
so
the
I'm
genes
like, oh,
somewhere.
cool, I guess. Somewhere in there, there's just like...
There's a pilot gene, it had to come out.
I don't know, because there's still a part of me that's like, I love art, I love drawing, I love all that, but there's still that other side of me that likes, you know, a little bit of adventure, getting outside.
Yeah, that's not exactly what this job is.
No. Well, it isn't here, just not out here. That's the thing, is it's this weird balance of like internal and external. It's like, a lot of what I love about animation is, it's like, it's probably not a good thing, but it's like my ultimate escapism of just being like, okay, I'm in this world now. This all turns off. Yeah. I'm not paying any attention to the things on the outside, and I'm just like, I'm one of the bumblenumbs now. I'm a super science friend. And I'm
6 hours later.
6 hours later, I'm like, oh shoot, taxes. Oh no.
So what were the shows growing up for you? What were the cartoons that were in your world?
Oh man. I caught the tail end of like kind of the weird stuff that came out, like the Rocko's Modern Life, and a little bit of Felix the Cat, and then like SpongeBob kind of followed that. So there's that kind of really wackadoo style, but I definitely got like hard into anime as well. So there's still that. You'll even see that in a lot of the Super Science Friends. Like you'll see Einstein's like super turnaround. Like there are some styles of anime that I think are just so beautiful and so well done. Like obviously Ghibli and all that beautiful, gorgeous stuff. And then there is like the really cheap stuff, but I find it so ideal for comedy. Just that like simplicity of the character designs, these really, really hard cuts to poses or faces that just like all of a sudden transform, they break model. And I really enjoyed the comedy of that, so I thought that was really drawing. And of course the costumes, and like it was something that was just a little bit different from stuff they were developing here. So
here's how I date this. So that my first job was at a studio where I was like just 3 months later than them rapping on Felix the Cat. Oh, so the shows you were growing up on, I was already working at that point. That's how much older I am. That's why I always want to know. But I'm always curious because like the influences are really interesting, and it is. Yeah. I've been doing it long enough now. There are these generational leaps. So like I remember anime becoming a thing, and I was already working, and I was already part of it, and yeah, you get influenced by it, but I got influenced in a very different way than you would have been because it was part of your wallpaper. It was something new for us. I mean, my anime wallpaper is. Like Battle of the Planets, like the original Gatchaman, like because there were a couple shows that came over way early, and that was the one that was on when I was in kindergarten.
Yeah, was that your first anime?
Oh, totally, yeah, Gatchaman, and it wasn't Gatchaman, it was G-Force. It was Battle of the Planets, and it was dubbed poorly, and they had hacked it together differently, and it was awesome.
Everything spikes.
And, well, yeah, but there was this awesome spaceship, and they had these cool suits, and it was all these things. And then there was this other part that they had sandwiched in with this robot who was like an R2-D2 ripoff to be the narrator to kind of pull it all together. Yeah. But yeah, but it's a very different anime. It was an earlier, and it's not even going back like there was Astro Boy, there were things like that too. But then this boom happened, this huge boom, and I mean I probably saw it first because it was affecting. Comic book artists.
Yeah.
More than it hadn't got into animation here yet, and so it was like guys like Joe Mattiera was doing X-Men, and he had he would draw these big hands and big feet, and it was still this hybrid of North American comic book art and this sort of anime influence. Adam Warren was doing stuff. There was all these people who were kind of these hybrids, and so it crept into my drawing at the very same time that I was learning really like old school basics, Alex Toth stuff, and because for me it was as a first year university, Batman the Animated Series came out, and Ren and Stimpy came out. And those two things changed everything. Because even Animaniacs, I was like, it still felt American. I mean, it still felt modern American. It felt like it was cool, and it was really interesting. But Ren and Stimpy, there was nothing else like it.
Yeah.
And Batman the Animated Series, there was nothing else like it. And that was sort of an awakening. And I hadn't planned on going into animation, but I kind of fell into it. And that's when I wanted to find out how do they do all this stuff. Because I was seeing all these horrible things getting made.
Yeah.
And it's kind of more of a learning process, like learning all the horrible shit and then trying to model after the good stuff. But then you go back and find out who their influences were. And so at the same time, there was all this like old school Jack Kirby, Alex Toth, all these things coming from the Bruce Timm influence. All of a sudden, these big shoes and big feet and big hands big eyes. Yeah, it was all kind of happening at the same time. Whereas you guys just grew up on it.
It did come in, like there was definitely a distinct turning point, and I was still pretty young, but I do like distinctly remember like this new, and it was a bunch of them that came in once, like Pokemon Digimon and like Gundam Wing. That one I remember being like, this is what? But it was distinct. Like it didn't just blend in with all the other cartoons we were watching. It was definitely like, this is different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it all kind of came in a wave, and then all of a sudden it was like, this is all I want.
And did you get into like the cosplay stuff and everything too?
A little bit later, but yeah.
Yeah?
It started with just like drawing my own, being like, I'm gonna make a cool anime character, and they're gonna have this robot suit, and they're gonna have this like transforming animal sidekick and these superpowers. It was kind of like that was my superhero. I never got into like Batman, Superman. It was like these kids that all had just like, it was very customizable, and I think that was a lot of why I really liked it, because it was easy to, instead of being like, I want to be Spider-Man, it was like, I want to be in this show, and here's me in this show.
Okay, really?
It was really easy to like make yourself a character rather than emulating a character that's already there.
Right.
Which I think that's, I don't know, it seemed easier with
and
anime
so that's the difference too, because for us it wasn't that. You didn't put yourself in the Spider-Man, you didn't put yourself in the Superman world, whatever it was because it was about that one character.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was more like, I want to be Spider-Man, I want to be Superman, I want to be Batman.
Or like, that's my hero.
Yeah. So what you're saying sounds like a very different, very different experience as a fan.
Definitely.
Because you feel like you can be.
It felt like a club,
and like
there was that potential to like join the club. Because it's often with anime that there's like a group.
Yeah.
There are obviously animes where there's like one kind of star character or a very niche team. That still exists within anime, but it was a lot more like, especially with like Digimon and things like that. It was so easy to be like, there's a lot of character of the week type stuff, or there's a lot of variation, and just like, here's your list of possible like superpowers and sidekicks and whatever, and you could kind of just be like, all right, well, I'll make one like this.
Yeah, it's a different viewing experience. That's cool. I never thought of it that way. Yeah. Okay, so but here you were like these teen years, you're drawing this stuff.
Oh yeah.
You're that kid in school.
Definitely.
Corners, sides of your textbooks, sides of your notebooks.
100%. Yeah. History class, don't remember anything, but I got some wicked drawings out of it.
Yeah. Okay. And it was a friend of yours who brought animation as a.
Well, part of it was I grew up in Oakville, so or for the most part, I moved there very young. So Sheridan's in my hometown, basically. So it was. It wasn't like a close friend. It was like an acquaintance who was just kind of like in my art class, and they were just talking about it, and I was like, oh, of course. And then after that, I went and talked to my art teacher about it, and he was like, yeah, of course, like, you should apply. And it definitely, like, I think the friend I had talked to was definitely more geared towards illustration and the fine arts, but they kind of go in tandem. Like the illustration program and the animation program tend to go hand in hand. A lot of people will apply to both. but I was definitely like, painting's fun. I like painting, but I want to draw the same character over and over and over again, kicking some guy in the face.
So the actual act of animating then, like you would describe yourself as an animator?
I would. I do a lot more storyboarding and a lot more kind of pre and post production now. That tends to be
that's part of the job now.
That's part of my job. That's just kind of like how it rolls. I'm very flexible. I've never really specialized. A lot of people have told me that that's kind of the way to go, but it's just never been for me. But animation came to me first. That felt natural. Like even my first like week at Sheridan, it just made all the sense in the world to me to be drawing that way.
Because like I mean, I'm not an animator. Like I have animated, you know.
It's very tedious. It's definitely like you are drawing the same thing over and over again, but slightly progressed. And it sounds really tedious, and it kind of is. And it definitely, when you're doing like more cleanup, you can kind of get a little fatigued. But there is something really fun about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can all. But see, there's this thing in when you're animating where you can actually think in time.
Yeah.
Like it's
you think in time and space, and
yeah,
like,
it's a whole other dimension. Like I went back a couple years ago and tried to animate some stuff, and it was something of my own. And I've done like 4. It's like a little minute-long film, and there's like 4. I've animated it 4 times. I've never finished it. But I wrestle with it because it's like this other muscle. Because you're drawing in 2D.
Yeah.
You know, you're drawing something that is 3-dimensional on a 2D plane.
You feel like it's 3-dimensional.
Yeah.
But
so you're thinking in 2D and you're thinking in 3D already, but then when you're actually trying to animate something, your brain has this other piece of it that you actually have to access.
Yeah.
And you start thinking in 4D. And it's a muscle that I haven't exercised in so long. So when I was doing it, I was like, I could feel it. Like it's like, what are you asking me to do in here? And so when I go, and so people, and I really think it's like there are people out there who are prone to it.
Yep.
Like I think your brain goes and thinks in time differently than mine does.
Yeah, I think I can see that for sure, and especially like even just looking at it, like if I'm looking at like an onion skinned, and I see like a bunch of frames or a bunch of drawings that like are really tight, and then you see one over here, I can see what that timing is. Like it's almost like, it's kind of like people who can read sheet music. I can't. Like some people can read sheet music and they can hear it. I can't do that. But for me, it's kind of the same with animation. I can see like the drawings in order and be like, I can see how the timing of that.
Yeah, because somehow this thing here that's doing this also somehow exists as a chunk. Like it really feels for me like my brain is trying to ask it to go here, and then somehow you have to see it all as one unit in that amount of time.
Yeah.
Because it's the impression you're left with. That's what animation really is. Yeah. Like even those individual drawings, a lot of them have to be ugly in order to make this finished thing. It's because all that matters. It's like it's when you watch it, it's over.
Yeah.
And so
in real time it makes sense.
Yeah.
But if you look at one individual frame, you're going to be like,
can't.
what is happening?
Yeah, and really what your viewer is actually experiencing is the impression they're left with when it's over.
Yeah.
And so you have to be able to embrace that in a way that my brain won't do. Like I think it's fascinating. I think it's like a whole superpower that like, because I know that it's almost there, like I can feel it, and I can't maintain it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you get something out of that, and you get that, like that's to me the distinction of someone who is an animator, that they can live in that, and they can, I don't know. Like it's
like that place.
Yeah, that's
comfortable in that place.
That's outstanding. That's outstanding. I can't. Yeah, my brain won't do it for any prolonged period of time. I'm always this close to it, and then that's it. I can't do it.
I wish I was more like that with color. I feel like there's a lot of people who get that kind of like, they can see the bigger picture of color and how the colors work together in that, like more than just individually this plus this, like.
But is it just exercising the muscle, or is it that your brain is just there, do you think?
I think it's like anything else. It's a little bit of both. I think if you think about like people who are athletically inclined, anyone can learn how to ride a bike, anyone can learn how to do a flip. But some people are going to take longer to do it than others. Some people are just naturally geared that way. But that doesn't mean that anyone can't do it. You just might have to work harder to get there.
Yeah. Maybe it's the distinction of being able to live in it or not. You know?
It also depends on like if this is what you like. Like if you're trying to, wedge that square peg in a round hole, then you're better off maybe doing something else.
Do you miss it now that you're not doing as much of it?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Wow, good for you. I mean,
every once in a while I'll be like, Brett, come on, please, just one. I think it wasn't 3, it was during like episode 2, I did this really quick job for GM. It was like a car commercial where it was like a heart and a brain who were just smashing each other all over the place. And it was only like 2 or 3 days, but those 2 or 3 days I was just like, yes. And then it was back to...
That's awesome.
Although I love boarding, I really do.
Yeah.
It's just, I like both enough that I'm like, all right, hand off, switch off, let's swap. That's why I need a clone, so that we can take turns.
Right. So you actually want to be doing all of it at once.
I very much do. I think to the point that's like a little detrimental, like with episode 3, the episode that I directed, I did get a little too, I think, involved with animation to the point that I was stepping on Larissa's toes a little bit, because I was kind of like, I want to do it. I want to do it all. I want to make the whole episode start to finish. But so I have to learn to kind of.
Well, this is the whole like maturing as a director thing, right?
Yeah, you gotta learn to let go. You gotta learn to like figure out like manage your time as much as you're managing their time.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess we haven't said it for the purpose of the cameras, is that you are currently you're the director of Super Science Friends.
Not quite. I'm co-director, so Brett and I are essentially taking turns because of the overlap of schedule. So while he's directing 4, I'll be directing 5, but it's kind of staggered. Yeah. So like while I'm doing the first half of 5, he'll be finishing up 4, and while I'm doing the later half of 5.
So he hasn't totally let go yet.
Oh, no. Well, even on episode 3, he was still the producer. He's still in on the conversation. He's still in every meeting. Yeah. Especially since this was like, you know, my first time directing, so there was a lot of like questions just as far as like technically, or maybe technically is not the right word, but just as far as, you know, like I'm not going to go out and hire the sound crew myself. Mm-hmm. That's still his sound crew, so I'm going to be like, okay, so who do I talk to? Okay, I talk to James, and so there's still some guidance.
It's kind of process questions, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Protocol and all.
So let's have a little bit of how you got there, because I mean that sounds like that's a pretty good gig. Directing episodes of Super Science Friends. I mean,
it's a great show.
Because in and of itself, like the show itself is something that you could spend 5 hours talking about in terms of like what it is and how it got to be what it is, and the fact that it's not with a broadcaster and you guys are just making it yourselves. And
not having someone who's like, but we need to sell toys. It just gives us so much more freedom. Yeah.
So you have this little pocket utopia in terms of the show you're getting to direct. But you had to get there somehow. So you draw pictures, you like cartoons, the light goes on, you apply to Sheridan. Did you have was there a backup plan?
Backup plan probably would have been like, I could always get my pilot's license. I could always go back. Because I mean, getting your license is like, you would want to go through school for that, but it's not necessary. It's more about just putting in the hours. Mm-hmm. I'm a little bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? Workhorse, I guess. Like, it's very easy for me to just like put in the hours. Yeah. So if the whole animation thing had like just blown up and gone under, I'm fine to like, okay, I'll get a serving job. I'll do something else and I'll work at that. Yeah. So I mean, like you've already said, you identify as an animator. That was kind of the thing. Now you had to make a film. Yeah. Were you guys doing solo films? Were you doing group films? Group films in 3rd year and a solo film in 4th year.
Yeah, so you were part of that cohort. That was already okay.
That was interesting.
Yeah, because that experience of doing the group film first.
Yes.
That's its own set of personalities and.
Yeah, I almost like I can't say for sure what would have been better, but I could see. For some reason, it would have made more sense in my mind to have done a solo film first and then a group film, because learning how to work with people, it's one thing to learn how to make a film, and then to learn how to make a film with people, and being able to delegate and being able to, you know, temper your pride and figure out what's best and what's going to, you know, be the most, like, what's going to make the most sense, I think is a totally different set of skills. And I think it would make more sense to learn how to make a film first and then learn how to work with people.
Well, that's because you've got, I mean, everybody's got some creative ego coming to the table there, and it's young creative ego too, and you haven't been through the ringer, let's say.
Yeah. And it's creative ego that's coming out of, there are things that you just don't know how to do yet.
Yeah.
So when you have a team and all of a sudden none of you know how to comp, and you're all figuring out while also trying to manage who's doing what, it's kind of a lot at once.
So how does the process work there to come to, like, how does a group film come together in that process?
Messy.
So, but even how do you split into a team? Like, how does Sheridan set it up for you?
So in my year, they've kind of experimented a little bit with each year. I believe it was either the year ahead of me or 2 years ahead of me. They literally just they split the class in two and were like, you guys figure it out. You figure out who's doing what. Whereas in my year, at the very least, it was like, they had us all write down on a sheet kind of our priorities. It was like, do you want to animate? Do you want to do backgrounds? Do you want to do storyboarding? And so you kind of put it in
they
order.
tried to split it within.
So they tried to be like, okay, these people all want to be animators. These people all want to be background. You might end up doing a bit of everything, but at least you don't have a whole group where everybody just wants to design, because that definitely happens. Definitely, there are more people who want to design than requires design, unfortunately.
That's always been the case. It just always will be the case.
Yes.
Yeah. But what about the fact that there are 10 people who all want to be in charge?
That definitely, like, you'll see some people blowing up for sure. Our year, just in general, we're very, very, it was a pretty mature group. We were all fairly quiet. We were all fairly even-tempered. So there were obviously like a few explosions here and there. But for the most part, people got along. They were very like, head down, let's get this done. If anything, it just came down to people being like, you're not pulling your weight, more than it came to, I want to be in charge.
So what was your role?
I was a part of the story team on that one as well. So how the film set up is everybody had a pitch for what the film was going to be about, and then you picked one winner, and it was just democracy. Yeah. And so we picked one that was like another kid, his film was picked, so he was kind of, him and another girl were in charge of designs and basically wrote the script. And then me and 3 other people were going to be the story crew. We came in and we kind of broke it down. We sort of rewrote the story a couple times until we got something that we're like, okay, this kind of works. And then after the story phase was done, so while we're doing story, the rest of the team is doing things like backgrounds and like maybe character rotations and things to just prep.
And are you pitching that story back to the team?
Yep.
Yeah.
We kind of like decide amongst ourselves, and then we bring it to the team, and they kind of go like yay or nay.
Yeah.
But once that was done, everybody was animating.
Yeah.
Except for like 1 or 2 left over still doing backgrounds or doing comping. So it was kind of similar to what I'm doing now, which is story and then animation.
And how has that experience, I mean, because like Seneca does it, we did some stuff with them they do a Toon Week thing where they have 1 week to make a cartoon in groups, that kind of stuff. And so it's really guerrilla, forcing you into that place where like the roles become defined. This person's the director, this person's the production manager, all those kinds of things. And they do that before they make their own films as well, or I think it's before they do their final, I'm not sure if they do all individual films. But it really is like crash course on this, and you see how the personalities work and how they, like what each role has to do.
I think a shorter timeline would have made more sense, and it stops people from trying to make like 7-minute films as well, which is just a mistake.
Oh yeah, like 30-second films. If you like, make as many of those as you can.
Yeah.
So you can get better at them.
I actually, when I was in first year, I did that with another friend just for fun. We were just like, it was Christmas break, and neither of us were like, I still lived in Oakville, so I didn't have to travel home or anything. And instead of like doing a Christmas present, because we were all broke, so we were just like, let's just make like a 30-second little animated card, and we'll just send that to all our family members. So we did, and that was it. It took us 2 weeks, but it was just like this crash course, be like, okay, you're doing this, I'll animate, and so that was. So
how has all that impacted? Because it's very similar to what you're doing now. Yeah. Like in that experience. So, and I mean, you're. I'm not. It's not that you're directing at a really young age. Like it's not. No,
I'm older than you.
No, but I mean, you've been at this for about 5 years, right?
Yep.
And that's actually a pretty good timeline. It's like that's not. But some people, it takes them a lot longer to get to that place. So I mean,
some people aren't really wanting to necessarily go in that direction either.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, so that school experience is probably though fresher for you.
Right.
than maybe other people jumping into a directing job.
Right, yeah.
So how close a correlation, like how much do you draw from that experience into this, what you're doing now?
It's actually, like, one of the kind of cool consequences of that, or maybe not cool, it worked out well for me, but it means that I'm working with a lot of my peers. Like, Larissa is just a year below me.
Right.
She graduated a year behind me, so even, like, the people I work with here at Tinman are so, like, cool about, like, they really keep their egos in check, or there's no ego.
Yeah.
It's just like, yes, this makes sense. I'm the best at this, so I'm going to do this. You can do that. You can, like, it's not that. I'm not special. It's not like I'm your boss. It's like I'm doing this job. Direction is a job as much as animation is a job. My job's not more important than yours. It just so happens that it feels that way because I'm giving you notes, but it's not like, it's not necessarily an I know better than you. It's just, it's a different part of that machine.
Yeah, it's your job to tend the big picture.
Yeah.
Whereas it's their job to be...
Like, I'm keeping lookout while you're building the catapult. Kind of thing.
Okay. I like that one.
It's like, yeah, so, and that's very much the mentality around Tinman. And I know that's not everywhere and probably not even most places, but so I'm already working with my peers. So it kind of does feel a little bit like an extension of school. Like, it doesn't feel, it's definitely more polished. It's less messy. People have grown up, people are more mature, but it's kind of the same crowd a little bit.
Yeah.
So it feels a lot more just like you're making something with your buddies.
Well, I mean, that's largely, like, we rarely see job posts from Tinman and they've always joked, but yeah, you just go and you ask somebody, do you know someone who knows?
We're a secret club, and either you know the password to get in or you don't. You show up with your robe and you just say, like, spaghetti and eggs, and we let you in.
You just gave it all away. That's,
well, we change it every week,
okay,
so by the time this goes out, that password
there won't
is
even
long.
be robes anymore.
Yeah, jeez.
It'll be some kind of poncho.
It's going to be fall. You can't just
Right.
walk around in
It's
robes.
not robe season.
Jeez.
Because you said before that you've got artists in your family, and this is something that's really interesting. Like a lot of there doesn't seem to be a hard and fast rule. Like when I first started asking people this question, I thought it was like glimmering into like, oh, here's an ingredient that kind of leads people down this path a little bit. Mm-hmm. A lot of us grew up with very linear parents.
Yep.
Of certain generation where it's like, okay, you get a job, you have it forever, that kind of thing. I mean, that's fading now. Like certainly, I'm old enough to have almost grown kids, and I certainly didn't grow up in that world. But I come from a place where the idea of having a freelancer for a kid or an industry that's sort of different, it's like that's scary.
Yeah.
But a lot of people. You see a lot of people with parents who were teachers because they also they needed that stable job, but as teachers they were also very encouraging in terms of the arts and things like that, and music was in the house or whatever it might have been.
Yeah.
Then you get these other people who my aunt was made children's books. My uncle was a painter. My grandfather was a filmmaker, and that's like you have a direct example in your life of people who can go and have a life in the arts, and that blows my mind.
Well, that just comes down to like influence even. Like when you grow up around people who are doing this stuff, all of a sudden you're thinking like, oh, I could do this stuff. And I think like now that it's a bigger world, internet and all that, I think you'll see more variation. Mm-hmm. But it used to be like, if your dad's a smith, you're going to grow up to be a smith. Whereas like if your dad's or your mom is more into the arts, like now my parents don't actually work in the arts. It's just kind of been like a part of our upbringing. So like my dad's very musical. It's like singing all the time. He plays all kinds of instruments, that sort of thing. My mom actually works like just a solid factory job. So maybe that's where I get animation from. It's just like that mixture of just doing the same thing over and over again mixed with like the creative part together. That's what animation is.
Blue collar work ethic.
Yeah, some good old nose to the grind mixed with like a little bit of fairy dust.
But that is, I mean, that like, we are. It's a factory system, no matter what. Even in the most boutique situation, it's still a factory system.
It still is, for sure.
And it has to be because it's a team.
It is a very the thing with animation is, as much as it is an art, it's a very tedious, like repetitive. Yeah, it is in a lot of ways a factory job.
Yeah.
So.
But you're called upon to use all these other creative skills. So it was just sort of like there was music and art in the background.
Art wasn't. We were encouraged to explore like our artistic sides. Like even painting and drawing. I was actually very, my dad used to get mad at me because I never wanted to show him my art. I was always just like, no, this is mine. This is for me. I draw this for me. And he's like, no, we need, and my dad especially is very much like, he's very into gardening. He wants like pictures for the walls. He wants to paint the whole house. He loves this idea of just like, you know, having art in the world, having music and everything. He just wants that around him all the time. So,
Yeah.
for sure.
So this is so there's some fulfillment here with you doing this for him.
I think they were a little bit worried, and not necessarily that they thought I was going to be like a starving artist or anything, but I remember when I mentioned that I wanted to go to Sheridan, the one kind of like, by no means were they going to be like, don't do this, but they were a little bit cautious just to be like, we do want you to have like the university experience. We want you, we don't want your learning to stop here. Like, I think if anything, they were more afraid of me maybe specializing too quickly, like maybe getting into, just going into a job rather than, you know, learning about the world.
Yeah.
And like the thing about like university and colleges is you are learning a subject, but you're learning a lot of other stuff too. It's still a very, you know, good learning environment. That sounds redundant, but so they were a little apprehensive of that, just being like, they did want me to go to school, go to post-secondary school. And I'm like, well, it still is. It's just, it's a little more college geared. But no, they were
Because
totally...
Sheridan had already crossed over into being a university by the time you went.
It is. I mean, it's technically a degree, but I'll say it's a bit,
It's still a very specialized degree.
yes, I would say...
Like, what other classes did you take in first year outside of animation classes?
Like there was like a literature, there was like Roman history, or it was like mythology. I took mythology, I took criminology, and then there was just like music and writing, which I think were mandatory. And there was an English one that was mandatory. And they were good, but it was...
When does that...
Everyone had the mentality that this was like, we're doing this to get the degree, and we're doing the bare minimum to get this out of our way.
So when, in the 4 years you're there, when did those just drop right out?
Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately. Unfortunately, I would say unfortunately, they do persist into the fourth year. You do have two, what are they called? Extra courses that you have to take in fourth year, which is only unfortunate because it does kind of get in your way. You're trying to focus and just keep your mind in this space of like making a film, and then you also have to remember whose 5 sons Zeus has. And you're just like, this is distraction noise. But some people will try to get those done ahead of time, like they'll do it over the summer or something. But I was working all summer, so I was like, I'm not doing both, forget that.
So are you just like all animation all the time?
You mean like in my life?
Yeah, everything. Like, I mean, it's because
I work pretty long hours, but I definitely...
Because if you're saying right now that in that fourth year, like that those 2 extra classes, but you're telling me like...
in fourth year, it's your world. You're living
because
in
you're
the
making a
studio.
film, and you're
And you're slow at it.
Yeah.
Like if I had to make a 1-minute film now, it would take me probably a couple months. Yeah. Whereas like it took me the whole year to do it before. Because you're still learning, you're still figuring stuff out. I spent way too much time on storyboards that I didn't need to spend that time on. Or like a lot of people made that mistake, or changing your story halfway through. So you make a lot of those mistakes, but you just have to kind of go through that.
But the idea of going and having to take 45 minutes of like Greek classics and all there doesn't expand your mind or to give you a rest. It's just really just taking
any
fucking
classes
time away.
you didn't have to be there for, you'd cut them.
Yeah. So, but as you progressed, I mean, like so you're clearly somebody who lives and breathes this. Yeah. You're part of that club.
Yeah. I'm a little insulated.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll go out with friends who aren't like in the animation industry, and I'll just be like, I don't know how to talk to you. What do you mean you don't know what frames are?
Can you maintain those relationships?
Totally. Like you'll find, like, I'm exaggerating a little bit. You'll get a bit of shock, just like maybe at first impact, but then you just go right into talking about whatever.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm still a human being. I still know what I still know what the buzz is, more or less. I know who Justin Bieber is. I don't know. Maybe I don't. Maybe I don't.
Now you're getting old. Now you're getting old.
Justin Bieber, you still a thing, right? I don't know.
I have no idea. I'm the wrong person.
Instagram, I have one.
All right,
I have one. One picture.
So that's a good segue in terms of that kind of live-work balance thing that we're trying to talk about a little bit. Because I know it's very easy to be somebody who comes in, and especially if you don't have, like I've got kids that I have to go home to and things like that, and it's like, but when I was starting out, I mean, it was 16-hour days. It was like you just lived in the studio, and it's because you finally getting to do this thing that you've always wanted to do, and you're around people who do it too, and
the club.
Yeah. Do you have to draw a line somewhere?
Sometimes, yeah, and it's a bit more self-checking at times, where it's just like, okay, you have to say, I gotta go.
Yeah.
I gotta go home. But yeah, it varies pretty wildly in my experience. There are moments where everyone's got to be down, everyone's got to be putting in the extra hours because it's crunch time, and then there are the more casual times where I find I'm still kind of like staying a little bit later, and that's just kind of me. That's sort of my work ethic. So I struggle a little bit to keep that balance in check. But for some people, like their priorities are at home, or their priorities are with something else they're doing, and this is very much just a job for them.
Yeah.
And that makes all the sense in the world.
I do see generally like there are more well-rounded human beings in the industry than like when I came into it. Like we were these mole people, and it really like social misfits and mole people, and animation just attracted that kind of thing. And it's great to go to like a taffy event and first of all see a mixed crowd, because it used to be all dudes except for like those 3 girls or whatever.
We're taking over.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic when you see like and it is more women. Like I think even Sheridan was above 50-50 this year, or like they actually crossed it. So it was more women than men.
Yeah, there's more
graduating.
Women coming out than there are men.
Yeah, which is amazing. I mean, like it really is a tidal shift. Trust me. Like there was, it was ridiculous. And it does seem people have like just more that they're. It's especially interesting to see how the studios are adapting when in today's world, like it's actually because it's a very healthy industry. So like it's more like there's more power in the hands of the artists in terms of you're choosing a job kind of thing.
Right.
So studios are having to be downtown because people want to be downtown. There's that kind of stuff. Like there's a whole lifestyle that people are. It's almost like I guess I might almost be a little bit jealous. Like people are getting to choose where they want to work based on a lot of other things other than like you'll fucking give me a job. Amazing.
There's still a little bit of that going around for sure. I know there's a few people who are hungry for work who will kind of take what they can get.
Yeah.
So I think there's more of that. There's certainly more freedom now. You can kind of pick and choose a little bit. But I'd say like if you're coming out, you want to kind of grab what you can get, at least to start. And then once you get a bit more experience, you certainly get more selection.
But yeah, so like studios seem to be vying in terms of they're selling more. I remember when they first started trying to sell lifestyle. It was kind of cute.
You can go home at one point.
Well, it was almost even there was some like when they were trying to. So Vancouver back, I remember when they would like sell, a studio would sell themselves based on being in Vancouver, and have like this video on their website of how amazing Vancouver is, and it's all these green parks.
Ocean.
Yeah, it was all that kind of thing. And we'd all look at me like we don't go outside. Like why are you selling? Like I don't ride a bike. Like don't sell me on that. I'm more concerned with with the treats that are in the machine in the back room that I can get, like my Mars bar or what I think was M&Ms at the time.
Still full of.
I know you guys really do have a lot of junk out there. That's terrible.
They're trying to keep us here as much as they can with like bribes.
I'm moving into like I eat watermelon and grapes these days, and that's all because I will eat a bag of Doritos if you put it in front of me, and if like I'll eat jujubes for dinner. So like
I got my dad's sweet tooth. 100%.
Yeah, I don't know where I got mine, but it's like I got all the sweet tooth in the family. So what do you do? Like, how do you keep a balance in all this?
I don't at the moment. I don't.
Yeah, you're in that phase right now.
It's definitely it's possible to have a balanced life. I do think it's more difficult than if you have kind of like a regular job. I think animation is getting there, but you kind of have to really like pick and choose. Like at least one major thing has to drop off. So for me, I've got kind of the longer hours, and that partially just comes with being like, being a director or being kind of in on the pre-production stuff. Like you kind of got to stay a little bit later. But I do have the extracurriculars that I like to do on the side. I play a bit of soccer, do a bit of Muay Thai, but it's like the nights that I do those, I don't get a full night's sleep. That's just the reality of how that works. Everything has to bind to something. Or it's like I'm, grabbing whatever peanuts from the snack room for dinner and then I'm hitting the pillow as the second I get home. Like something has to give. You can't quite have it all. They say you can have it all. You can have all but one thing.
Okay, but let me ask you this then. Is that we tend to not use the word ambitious.
Right.
Because we're artistic people, and so for some reason being ambitious is like what the guys on Bay Street are, and those kinds of things.
Hollywood, no.
Yeah, well, and I think it's a Canadian thing. I think it's a lot of things psychologically that lead into that.
We're looking to have enough.
Yeah,
I think is kind of the Canadian mentality.
Right. But I've come to this place where it's like, so the words like being competitive is a bad word. Being ambitious can be a bad word. Yeah. But everything you're describing, you're somebody who you're directing and you want certain things out of your work. And not necessarily that you want to have a paycheck, but you want to do good work and you want to be breaking it to you, you're an ambitious person.
I would say so.
Yeah, and I think, it took me very long to come to terms with that. I'm an ambitious person too, because
it sounds very selfish.
It does.
It sounds very me.
And a lot of other lines of work, you wouldn't think twice about being self-labeling as ambitious.
Yeah, you'd be like, I'm gonna have to step on your face now, so I can get up here. Top. Yeah. And he'd be like, I get it.
If you can reach it, like it's because
come at me.
Yeah. But we struggle with it, and I think that's just the price of being an ambitious person. Yeah. Like you're going to put in, you're going to put in those hours because you want to do the best job possible, and you want to be the best at it. And it's not that you want to, like what you're describing, you don't want to be that person's boss. It's not why you're doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in a lot of those other, maybe in some of those worlds, that is what it's about.
Some people just want to have boss people around. Some people do. And that's fine, if that's what you're going to do.
A little kick out of it. But everything you're describing is just that. Like, you're ambitious, and you want to do really good work, and you want to be in control of your work, and you want to be in control of your own destiny a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's less about bossing other people around and being like, I'm the boss, and more about just like, this is how I want it done, and I want it done good, and I want it done now.
But you've got other people here who feel the same way. And you are in a position where your job, like you said, your job is to manage all this kind of stuff as a director. But it's okay. But it's tough to. Your 20s are those years where you kind of just choose what it is you're going to put time in on.
Yeah.
And if it is that you want to be the best and you want to do the best work, then that's kind of, and while you have the energy to not maybe get a good night's sleep.
I'm going to pull as many all-nighters as I can until I can't do that anymore.
Are you doing anything of your own?
I have a few, like, I'm trying to keep up as much as I can just doing my own art at home. It's such a weird kind of creature for me because I know a lot of friends who will have like their own like Instagrams where it's just all their own artwork or Tumblrs or things like that. And I kind of have that. I don't post any of it. I have just like a folder at home where I'm just like, I get out my creative stuff and I put it in there. And some of them are just like little animated things or ideas for a greater concept. And then I just get that out and then I put it away for now. And I might delve into it now. I don't really have the time for my own stuff.
Is that a goal though?
At the moment. It's a goal that I'm content to leave in the future for now.
Yeah.
It's not something where I'm like, every day I'm trying to make room for it. It's kind of like, I'm going to get there, but I'm going to ride this train for a bit.
Yeah.
And kind of
well, because this is what you're doing right now.
Yeah, and I feel very much a part of it. Like, even though, like, Super Science Friends is very much, like, Brett's creation, I still feel a part of it. I still feel like this is, something I'm proud of, too. So I don't feel necessarily like I'm just doing a job for the man and I'm putting my own ambitions on the back burner. It's kind of like, this is part of my ambition too.
I think it's hilarious that you would even jokingly refer to this as the man. And Brett.
The man. Sticker to the man. I don't know what else to call it.
Keeping you down.
Just keeping me under his thumb. One of these days I'm going to take over.
So what are the dreams and goals for you? Like what do you want out of all this?
I mean, this is where my ambition just kind of like goes like this, where it's a little bit like, I just want to make some cool shit.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be my own stuff that I think of. If I think of something really cool, I'll go for it. I got a few ideas. They're not the greatest yet, so they're going to take a back seat. But
you're getting better at making things.
I am getting better at making things, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing, so it doesn't feel like waiting. And my personality, as much as I can be ambitious and want to be better and want to do better, there's also a part of me that's okay to just kind of, let's see where this goes. Maybe I'll become a pilot. That's still on the table. I'm not necessarily, I've toiled with the idea of like, maybe there is a chance that I'll like run my own studio one day. I'm not necessarily married to that idea. It's not something that I'm like, yes, that's the goal. I just want to make some cool shit.
Yeah. Yeah, and as long as where you are is giving you those opportunities and you're happy and you're not getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Happy to be here.
And it sounds like, I mean, if you had something that you brought to the table, if you had something you wanted to come in and pitch, if you had something that you believed in, you've got people here who will listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's not like you've got to go to like the development coordinator there to pitch through this chain and all that kind of stuff.
I think like if I didn't have Tinman, if I wasn't working here, if I was working for a place that had a lot of overhead, I think I would just put on YouTube. Like I'd probably do something similar to what Tinman did with its own creations, which is just like, I care less about it being like this big world success, although that is really cool. Everybody wants an award on everyone wants the trophy. But if I had to choose between like making the next like smash hit Adventure Time but at a cost, I'm losing that creative control and it's very much becoming a part of the beast. Not to say that Adventure Time is. I mean, I'm just saying like if that was the trade-off where it was less my thing, but it was more successful, I would choose something that's less successful. I would choose something that I'm like, I had a big hand in this, and this is, or at the very least, this is what I wanted it to be, kind of thing. It doesn't even necessarily have to be all me. If I have people I'm working with who all are like-minded and they're creating stuff that I'm like, yeah, this is awesome, then that would be great, even if it's not huge.
How do you feel that, like being at a place like Tinman, how has that shaped your idea of this stuff? Like you've got an interesting example that's in front of you, and not everybody has it.
Yeah, I think.
And you've got some strong personalities around that you have a lot of access to, who certainly have their ideas about how they think this should all work and how things should run.
Again, I think it helps that they're, again, there's not like big egos at play, with maybe one or two exceptions. But it's really easy to kind of back and forth with the people here.
It's interesting. So it may be that there's not stifling egos at play. But you're working very closely with the two people, and one in particular, who owned the studio and started the studio, that kind of thing. And that takes a great deal of ego to set up and say, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
And
like I said, there's one or two exceptions.
And that's where, and that's where ego doesn't. It's the same way ambition and competitiveness. Ego tends to be a bad word.
Yeah.
But you have to have it to become something. To start your own studio and to build it into this. That requires a certain amount of very, very healthy ego.
I would say maybe ego's the wrong word. Or maybe I'm looking at pride. It's kind of like they'll have strong opinions.
Yeah.
And they might fight you on it, but it's not. They still listen.
Yeah.
Like it's not like they're just being like, "Shut up, I'm the boss," or "Shut up, this is my thing." There'll be a debate kind of thing. So there is still an ego there, but it's not a wall.
Right.
But in the big once in a while, it's a wall.
But in the grand scheme of your own career, you're passively learning from the culture you live in terms of what's defining your ideas about the industry and things like that. And you're doing it in a place where they're kind of outside of the industry.
Yeah.
So it gives you kind of, you without maybe even knowing it, you have to be kind of growing up as a creative professional with some ideas about the business that maybe somebody else wouldn't.
I think like the Tinman mentality has definitely rubbed off on me a lot, as far as like, in a lot of ways, like I would be hard pressed to go back to having clients, and unless it was something like they like, unless I got into a project that I was just like, this is totally rad and I want to be a part of it and you can take control and that's fine.
Yeah.
Because I already think it's cool. But yeah, just the like Tin Man doing their own thing all the time is very easy to just settle into. Like I said, I've been at Tin Man for most of my career, but I did, you know, there was a few years back where I was working in the big studio, and that was not the greatest. It was definitely like, I can see what they're doing here and the work is good, but like, this isn't for me.
Yeah, and I think that's all it really is.
Yeah.
Like, some people fit one place, some people fit better another.
Yeah.
That's part of that kind of like, you want to speak cautiously about, like, it's not a bad thing, but it's not for you.
There are some people who are like totally into it. Like I have, like my partner works for one of those big studios and he couldn't be happier. Like he's really flourishing in that department. But it's just not for me.
Yeah.
I guess I do have a bit more ego than I thought. I need to have a bigger voice. I need to be able to kind of like be in the room, and even if my ideas are shit, I need to be able to just get those out, I guess. Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No. It makes perfect sense. It makes total sense.
To be fair, I am, like, in a lot of ways, I'm still figuring it out, and I think I definitely can feel myself being shaped by this environment.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And you work very closely with Brett.
Yes.
I mean, as an observer, you seem to have, even though it's probably the most laid-back version of it, you are in a situation a lot of us don't actually get, where you've got a very clear mentorship situation. Yeah. Even though it's probably not, like, there's not very little that's formal about it, you know, in that respect.
Yeah, but no, I think
you've got someone who's doing a job and doing things the way, clearly you respect the way they do their business.
Yeah.
You like the work that he's doing, and so therefore you're in there now and you're co-directing with him. You have a very strong mentor situation here, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and I think like a big part of the reason why I wound up directing for Super Science Friends is because I think we are really like-minded in that way. So again, it's like I can see this person and be like, yeah, this person is at least doing something right.
Yeah.
And let's learn from that.
And it's kind of reassuring that someone who thinks similarly to you cannot lose at this game.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. That's because it's tough.
It's tough, and luck plays into, like, I wouldn't say this to like to take away from any of the hard work that's gone into this, but some people are really unlucky, and sometimes you can be the hardest working person and still kind of fail for a bit, and maybe you will make it someday.
We call that playing the long game.
Yeah.
That's how we kind of like tell ourselves it's all gonna be okay in the end, because you're just playing the long game.
Yeah, but sometimes, and maybe it is just like that je ne sais quoi, that little something that just worked or just clicked. But no, on the other side of that, I think they're doing some really smart stuff here.
Luck is really when opportunity presents itself, knowing how to take it.
Yes, and I think they're very good at that.
Yeah, but you still have to have all the other, like, if you're not a hard worker and if you're not all that kind of stuff, you're not gonna, like, the luck will just pass you by.
Yes, I think that's a very smart way of looking at it. It's kind of like you need to be ready for when that wave comes. And you might have to wait for that wave to come, but you got to be ready.
Yeah, it's going to look like you were really lucky, but it's because you had everything.
But you were setting up and you were scouting out the waters.
And you were just prepared to put in the work that would make it successful too.
Yes.
I say a little thank you for giving us your time.
Oh no. Thanks for having me.
And thanks for showing us around. It was kind of fun to go over on the other side too. Tinman has their own YouTube channel.
Yeah. They've got everything.
Yeah.
Just search
Tinman Creative
or Super Science Friends. It's everywhere.
There you go. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you next time.
Cool.